It's not been an easy task checking the trade in illicit drugs in the country. The special task force set up to check the cultivation of cannabis in most states is facing a running battle with dealers to stop the trade. Oyo State is an example where the task force is making steady efforts to stop the cultivation of cannabis.
It's a journey of nearly 2 hours from Ibadan tollgate to the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The convoy, comprising armed soldiers and other operatives, finally arrived at Onigambari in Oluyole local government area of Ibadan. They hold a short operation meeting and then proceed through this narrow road. And then staring them is this big farm of cannabis sitting on over 58 hectares of land. The Director of Operations and General Enforcement, Mr. Olugbenga Mabo, says cannabis remains the most abused in Nigeria.
It's criminals that are involved. Some of them take advantage of the economic situation. We'll get maybe some farmers to do work, but it is criminal organizations that are actually behind this thing. We will not relent on our efforts, so we advise them to look for legitimate means of livelihood rather than continuing this, because we will not relent.
The NDLEA boss also explains that the war must involve all strata of the society.
It is not a war that can be won by only the security agencies. This one that we did, of course, we had cooperation of many security agencies, but we need the general public to also come up with information, number one. We also need parents to guide their children.
In this small farmhouse are coats and other wares believed to have been abandoned by the farm owners on getting a hint of this operation. The latest destruction of over 50 hectares of cannabis is the second in recent times in the same Gambari Forest Reserve, which is one of the largest forest reserves in southwest Nigeria.
As part of the measures to get out of the current economic recession, Nigerians may have to change their consumption pattern. That's the view of the Edo State Governor, Mr. Adams Oshiomhole, who says that the current difficulty in the country is self-inflicted. He adds that the only way to address the challenge is the adoption of policies that will enhance local production and reduce pressure on the nation's reserves.
There has to be a time lag between when you formulate policies on the basis of what you find on ground and when the benefit of those policies begin to manifest. I mean, if it takes 60 years to get to this terrible state we are in, why will anybody think that other 15 months of a new government, you will fix it? No, I've never had that illusion. What are the issues in the system? That we got ourselves to a situation where everybody was contributing to rural poverty. And we found ourselves in a very dangerous vicious cycle. A nation whose consumption pattern has been so distorted by the few who have access to stolen money, such that everywhere you go in the country, you have imported tomato puree, you have toothpick, you have all sort of things, expired rice from all over the world. And this government said, no, we will continue this way. Nigerians, we have to go through reorientation. But you don't learn to perfect consuming what you don't produce, particularly those things that you can actually produce. If we are going to move away from a nation that has perfected the act of consuming precisely what it doesn't produce, but which is capable of producing, and we want our rural economy to improve, you've got to have to allow this price incentive to redirect investors properly to the agricultural sector. The whole essence of moving away state involvement in the economy more towards private sector driven economy is that the private sector should also aim at structuring their production pattern in a way that over time they do not need to import all of the things they currently import. If you go through the list of what they think, what they classify as raw materials, a lot of these raw materials are things that can be produced at home.
Edo State Governor, Mr. Adams Oshiomhole. Now we turn our attention to other issues, and if you recall, officials of the FCT Fire Service and other agencies recovered corpses of 2 workers from the rubbles of a collapsed building in Gwarinpa in the Federal Capital Territory of Abuja. The rescue and recovery was carried out by joint teams of officials of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and the Federal Fire Service, as well as the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps. But that collapsed building was one of many, I should say. And we have here with us a civil engineer, Mr. Friday Chukwu, who is in the studios with us to share his expertise on why the matter of collapsed buildings is such a recurring decimal in Nigeria. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Yeah.
We've heard the arguments: substandard materials, lack of enough investigation into the lay of the land. What is the major problem as far as why this happens again and again?
There are a gamut of problems, so many of them. We have the use of substandard materials, lack of supervision, lack of approval for the drawings for the buildings, use of non-professionals, a lot of them abound, that is quacks. The non-conformance to building code. There's what we call National Building Code. Nobody even talks about that. Nobody even hears about it.
Which government agency is responsible, in which it is their purview, to make sure that people go by these regulations? Because we know it's not the first time people are always saying that instead of getting architects, they get builders. Instead of getting engineers, they get builders. You know, so who's supposed to go around and make sure that people are building in the right places and they're using the right material?
Now, we have professional bodies. We also have agencies of government, both at the federal and state levels. All of these are supposed to, you know, synergize in the action plans, you know, action plan or enforcement for the building, you know, in the building sector or in the built environment sector. So each and every one of them have a role to play at the federal level, at the state level. Now, the building code, for instance, has not been domesticated in most of the states. What they have are building control agencies, like you have in Abuja. In Lagos, we have a Lagos State Building Control Agency, LAPSCA. And you know, in some other states, you have things like that. But you see, I think the main problem can be categorized into 2. 1, the use of non-professionals, and 2, the lack of supervision. And supervision involves, you know, getting your drawings approved by the relevant agencies. Most of these drawings, most of these things are not approved. They just concoct it. They just go and procure it. Let me use that word. They procure the drawings, and it does not pass the necessary, you know, professional processes that will certify and confirm that this drawing is now okay. Then again, you talk about the use of wax. We are having a lot of problem in this country because of these people.